How do you define luxury? Well, when it comes to houses, many years ago you would have said something like a Victorian townhouse or a country pile somewhere full of leather and wood and maybe a bit of a musty smell about it. And you could almost put those same labels on our luxury cars. Nowadays, however, the best example of modern luxury living is something like this, the Huf-Haus. It's very well engineered, has a lot of space, a lot of technology, and very sustainable. Now, unlike the latest luxury car from Mercedes-Benz then, the EQS. Welcome to a Huf-Haus, welcome to the Mercedes-Benz EQS, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's road test review of the new Mercedes-Benz EQS, it is, of course, that time when I ask you to make sure you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel and making sure you've also pressed that little bell button that's just down below there, because then that way you'll receive notification of when our next video goes live. If you like what we do, make sure you give the videos a bit of a thumbs up, and please, by all means, do leave us some comments, good or bad. If you've been a supporter of the channel for so long, thank you ever so much for being one. If not, and you like what we're doing, stick around, become a subscriber and help us mould how it's going to turn out. Now, the EQS, let's get on to this car, because I've been waiting to see it for quite some time. Well, I've been waiting to drive it for quite some time, because we actually did see the car at the tail end of last year where we did a little sneak peek video around it, but I wasn't able to drive the car then. Well, now I have, and I've spent a bit of time with it. But what is the EQS? Well, of course, it's Mercedes' EQ brand. It is the fully electric vehicles. And in some ways, you'd think, well, it's just an electric S-Class. It's an S-Class with the engine ripped out of it and a motor and some batteries put in it. Not quite. You see, unlike the other EQ brand cars, such as the EQA, EQB, EQC, and EQV that we've tested before, the EQS doesn't really share anything at all with the S-Class. It sits alongside it as the Mercedes-Benz flagship for sure, but it isn't just an electric S-Class. It's its first bespoke EV platform. And of course, the S-Class is an important car, not just for Mercedes, but for all of us, because throughout history, the S-Class has previewed technologies that we were going to see on, well, what now become kind of normal everyday cars. Airbags, crumple zones, Parktronic, radar-guided cruise control, all of those things that we take for granted in modern everyday cars first debuted on the S-Class. So here's the question that we want to answer. Is the EQS going to be as significant a car as the S-Class was going forward? And does it deserve to be Mercedes' flagship? Time to find out. As always, we kick off with the styling element of it. Probably, if I'm being honest, the least successful aspect of the EQS in my book. You see, Mercedes-Benz have decided not to follow BMW's path of going down the route of shock and awe and going for aerodynamic efficiency, which is great in some respects, especially an electric car, as we'll see later, but it's left it looking a little bit bland to my eyes, if I'm completely honest. It doesn't have the same sort of imposing nature as an S-Class does. However, there are some nice bits about it, and what I will say is it is very specification sensitive. The car that we saw back in our video at the end of last year was a very basic AMG line. It was black, it had small wheels on it, it just didn't really grab your attention. It could just have been an Uber. This one, however, is a little bit better with the bigger 22-inch alloys. You can specify it with the dual-tone paint scheme to make it even more sort of like stand-outish, but I'd probably avoid that if I was you. Anyway, let's have a chat. What have we got? Well, of course, we've got the big Mercedes-Benz three-pointed star here with a nice little embedded camera in it. Now, there's a huge amount of tech on this car that we're going to go through, so bear with me on that. But strangely, you've got two stars there, which is a bit odd, and you can go even further than that, because if you don't like this kind of filled in grille, what you can have is one that's got loads of little three-pointed stars embedded into it. If those two aren't big enough as saying it's a Mercedes, you can have even more splattered across the front of it. I probably wouldn't do that if I was you. What you do have, of course, is this EQ light bar, of course, that goes across the front. That's pretty much now a symbol of all electric cars, I would say. And these fantastic laser lights, headlights, which are phenomenal at night. You've got some nice bit of chrome down at the bottom there, just to kind of break things up. Now, it will be a bit specification sensitive, as I say, so I would look into that if I was you, if you are looking at an EQS. But as I say, from the front, it just kind of lacks that sort of imposing nature that the S-Class has been so renowned for. Never mind. At least it doesn't look as bad as the new BMW i7. Now, Mercedes-Benz call this a one-bow design, and you can see it best in its obviously side elevation. Obviously, you've got this swooping line that just goes up, right, curves up over the top, right down to the tail as well. And it's a hatchback, which is pretty unique in this style of car, in this class of car. The only downside with it is they've adopted exactly the same style for the new EQE, which is based on this platform and obviously is going to be the electric equivalent of the E-Class. And actually, at first glance, it's quite difficult to tell the two of them apart, which might not be so good if you spent the money on an EQS. However, what else have you got? Well, as I say, 22-inch alloys on this car really do make a difference. They make the car really stand out a lot more than those kind of more plain or smaller ones we saw in the car at the end of last year. You've got some nice bits of chrome trim, obviously, down here and along the bottom of the door. Flush door handles, as you'd expect, of course, until you're ready to actually then open the door. And then, of course, they will then just pop out and allow you to do that. And then, as I say, this swooping roofline all the way into this hatchback at the rear, which you can see is just, well, yeah, it's just pretty much as sort of really bland as the front, isn't it? I mean, you've got the de rigueur light bar across the top, your big three-pointed star there, which doubles as the boot badge, tiny little lip spoiler there, bit of chrome, badge, and that's really about it. As I say, it's probably the least successful aspect of the EQS, in my opinion. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Now, irrespective of whether you're a captain of industry or just a captain of your local golf club, you'll still need your EQS to be practical. Thankfully, it is. That there, ladies and gentlemen, is 610 litres of usable boot space, and it will extend up to 1,770 litres if you fold down the back seats. Of course, it's a hatchback, as I say, fairly unique in this class of car. It does give it a big air of practicality. Now, to put this into perspective, the BMW iX, which is an SUV that we're so belovedly fond of, has just 500 litres of usable boot space. This is a much more practical car. Now, you've also got some underfloor storage as well for your cables and stuff, and as you can see, we've got the AutoEV 4 suitcase testing with bags more room for soft bags and even more suitcases should you need them. But there's no space up at the front. The bonnet itself is sealed, and the reason for that is it houses quite a lot of electronics up there. So there's no space, extra luggage space up at the front of an EQS, much like the BMW iX. Now, rear seat space. Well, what do you think? It's absolutely vast back here. Now, as I said earlier, this isn't based on an S-Class, so it is a bespoke EV platform. And whilst it is actually shorter than in a standard S-Class, it has the same wheelbase. So the maximum amount of space has been utilised in here. You've got a relatively flat floor, as neat as damn it, just a small hump there, but not enough to cause any problems. And you simply just, well, look at it. I mean, that seat's set up for myself. I've got enough foot room, I've got more than enough knee room. The only thing I would say is headroom is starting to get a little bit tight because of that styling element. And if you're over, like, say, 6 foot, you're probably going to find it a little bit tight back here. Now, this car obviously does have the twin panoramic sunroof fitted as well, which is great because it floods light into the cabin. But obviously do bear in mind it will take up a little bit of headroom, so do check that out. Otherwise, well, as I say, it's lovely back here. It's beautifully comfortable. You've got this fold down armrest in here, which then has a little flip out part here for cup holders as well. You do have door bins, not huge, but probably enough for, I don't know, putting your mobile in or something. And obviously there's mat pockets there. Now, you can also specify it with a rear entertainment package as well, where obviously you'd get twin screens here, like that as well. And also with reclinable rear seats, although not quite the kind of adjustable kind of footrests and, you know, airline style seats that Mercedes do with their top of the range Maybach series. But even so, more than enough in terms of luxury back here for what you'd expect if you're coming from something like an S-Class or BMW 7 Series. You've got rear climate control, obviously, for the rear passengers in here as well, and connectivity down there by a couple of USB-Cs. And just the whole interior, which we'll come on to in a second, the fit and finish and ambience that you get in here is just something else. This lovely ambient lighting that just floods around the cabin is just wonderful, which you almost an infinite amount of number of colours you can have it in, and it can run around the side of the seats as well. You've got these lovely kind of soft pelt headrest pads in this particular model as well, which is lovely, and this kind of sort of like almost kind of yacht deck wood finish, and just the way all the kind of controls just slightly stand out a little bit from the surfaces. I really like that. It's a really nice design touch. But yeah, in terms of rear accommodation, there's bags of space back here. Now, obviously the big talking point with the EQS has been this, the Hyperscreen, which is an option, and it's an £8,000 option. Is it worth it? Well, the car we saw at the tail end of last year when we did our sneak peek video didn't have it. And if you don't have it, then basically what you get is the same as you get in an S-Class, which is a portrait style tablet screen here and a landscape one in front of the driver. And in fairness, you don't lose any functionality by having that instead of this Hyperscreen. It does all the same things. What it lacks, however, is the cohesion of styling, if you like, that you get with the Hyperscreen. Now, as I say, it's an option and it's £8,000, so it's not cheap. However, I think it could be one of these options, and coming from a car sales background, I know this, that there are certain options on cars that to protect residual values you've really got to have. You know, the 19-inch wheels on an E46 M3, or, you know, sat-nav on an early Aston Martin DB9, or the Lin audio system that we used to offer as well. They always made the cars more desirable, and whilst they were cost options, they made the cars worth a little bit more come resale time. And I've got a sneaking suspicion this could be the same with this. However, let's get started on it. Right, so to start the car up, we've got a stop-start button there, and it asks me to scan my finger point because the car knows that it's me. You see? All my settings are now embedded in this car, so how I like my climate control, my phone's in here, my seat position, the radio station I listen to, it knows it's me. There's also a little camera embedded into the dashboard that will work off facial recognition, much like your iPhone does as well. So it's really, really clever the way that it does that. Let me just turn this fan speed down a little bit. Now, with regards to the Hyperscreen, again, regular viewers will know I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to stuff like this. I like physical buttons. But the reason I like this so much is twofold. First of all, the things you need access to quickly, your climate control, your radio volume, is always on. So you've always got the climate control buttons here, and then your radio control button is down here on the steering wheel. Now, they are touch sensitive on the steering wheel, in fairness, another bugbear of mine. However, unlike the Volkswagen Group cars, they work slightly better, they're a bit more interactive, and they're set slightly further into the wheel, so you don't tend to hit them with your heel of your hand. The heel of your hand is well away from them. So I've never hit them by accident all the time I've had this car, whereas on the Volkswagen ones, I'm constantly doing it. I'm constantly hitting them. So that's one thing. The second thing is the way the car interacts with you as a driver. Now, it's got the best voice recognition that I've ever used on a car. And obviously, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that I've got a bit of an accent. So voice recognition's never really worked for me, but it does in here, because when the car arrived with the man from Mercedes the other day, you spend a bit of time setting it all up, and there are various phrases you use, so it starts to learn your voice, which is phenomenally clever. Hey Mercedes.
How can I help?
Open the passenger window.
I'm opening the passenger's window.
Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
Close the passenger window.
I'm closing the passenger's window.
Hey Mercedes.
How can I help?
Set cabin temperature to 19 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature at 19 degrees.
Now that is brilliant. That's as simple as that. So as you drive along, that's all you have to say to it. Now that's all very clever, and I really like that, and it works really well. It hasn't failed me at all this week, in fairness. And what have we got? Well, you've got 3 separate screens. This isn't one big screen. It's about 52 inches of glass across here with 3 screens embedded under it. The passenger one, this one here, won't come on unless someone's actually sat in the passenger seat. So it's nothing over there to distract you as a driver. You've effectively just got these 2 screens if you're in the car on your own, which again is brilliant. This one up here gives us all our information, and you can actually change this as well, depending obviously on what you want. If you want to set it up where you've got a different style of dash display, you can do that. Or if you want just, oh, hang on, if you want navigation up fully, you can have your navigation there. You can have different type of dials on it if you want as well. You can have what they call an understated one here, so it pretty much switches everything off. So you've got speedo and clock, a bit like the old Mercedes of old, which is nice. And as I say, there's plenty enough information that's available to you up here as well. Now, the technology on the car is phenomenal. In terms of outside, there's cameras all around it. And if we go into various different bits and pieces, such as the parking here, you can see you've got this 3-dimensional view of the car. I mean, I don't know how that works. And I'm not sure I'd want to sit next to the man at dinner who invented that. But I'm glad it does. It is unbelievably clever. It'll also park itself. It even knows if I've got the brakes on. Look, got the brake lights on there. Take my foot off, they go off. That's mind-blowing stuff. What was I saying about cameras? Ah, yes, right, so it'll park itself as well. So my daughter was so amused the other night when we went to a swimming class. I got the car to actually park itself into a parking bay, so it can do that as well. Everything's controlled through here. Obviously, you've got standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. One of the interesting things with the EQS as well is this, talking about the air quality. Now, when we're talking about practicality earlier, I was saying there's no under bonnet space. And the reason for that is there's a filtration system in the car that will actually take air that's coming from the outside and clean it. So especially in this day and age with harmful bacteria and God knows what else is in there, the car will clean the air and purify the air that's coming into the cabin. All of that's in there. That's why there's no space in there. And obviously on the bigger car, on the more powerful car, there's also going to be a second motor down in there. So that's what that is. So that's why. So all that's there. It's just so clever. I absolutely love it. Well, the sat nav is probably one of the best that I've used as well. In fact, I haven't actually really used Apple CarPlay this week. I've had it. The standard nav has been fantastic. But everything's controlled very simply through this system. The seats, brilliantly comfortable. You can adjust the seats as well. You can have massaging here. So if I want hot, relaxing shoulders, I just press that and then press the play, and it starts to, oh yeah, starts to, oh yeah, that's quite nice actually. Yeah, I'll stop that before we get carried away. But all that's in there. You can control the ambient lighting through here. I mean, there's just so much. And it's wonderful. I absolutely love it. You could spend hours playing with all of this. Look at it. Energizing comfort. We can have nice displays, and it starts to pump out refreshing air, and look at it. That's refreshing comfort, and it's put on the ventilated seats as well to refresh me and keep me comfortable. Oh, and now it's vibrating them for some reason. I'm not sure why. On the whole, I really like this system. I think it works. I like the hyperscreen, and I think if it was me that was having one, I'd be definitely choosing it. The rest of the cabin is nice. You've got good storage, this lovely sort of like yacht decking. I need to turn this off somehow. I'm not quite sure how that works. Let me just stop that. There we go. I just stop all of this. There we go. See, I can do it. Because we've not got the AMG line car, you've got this nice sort of like yacht deck wood here, so you've got this nice bit of storage in there, wireless charging in there for your mobile, good couple of size cup holders in there that will take a decent sized water bottle. You've got more storage in here with connectivity. There's 2 USB ports there. There's another 2 in there. There is a glove box. Yep, there's a glove box with enough space in there for your gloves. You've got this phenomenal Burmeister sound system in this car as well, which also does noise cancelling as well. So any extraneous noise, it uses a frequency to kind of block that out. And I'll get on to refinement when we're out driving the car. But, you know, there's more storage underneath here, this floating console. The seats, as I say, are phenomenal. They're heated, they're ventilated. The only thing I can fault the interior of this car on is these air vents. Now, they look lovely, these turbine air vents, but they are a little bit cheap plastic. That is about the only thing I can fault it for. Other than that, one of the best car interiors going. Now, the clever stuff doesn't just end there, because the sat-nav is also employed in the charging of the car as well. And I'll go on to that in a second. But first of all, the battery of the EQS is the largest available in a production electric car at just under 108 kilowatt hours, meaning this 2.5-ton Leviathan has the ability to travel up to 453 miles according to the WLTP cycle. You can also charge at speeds of up to 200 kilowatts, meaning if you find one of those ultra-rapid 350 kilowatt chargers, you can go from 10 to 80% in just over 30 minutes. But that's not the figure that impresses me. The figure that impresses me is this. If you were to use one of those chargers, you can add up to 186 miles of range in just 15 minutes. That's just enough time to go and get a cup of coffee and have a pee. I mean, that's phenomenal. Now, why I'm talking about the sat-nav, let me bring that into this equation. The sat-nav in the EQS is so clever, it will work out the most efficient route for you. That's not new, Brian, I hear you all say. It is with the EQS because it goes one stage further. It may take you off the beaten track where you think you should be going, because it knows where the ultra-rapid chargers are, it knows what speeds they're charging at the current time, and it knows how many of them are actually in use. We did an exercise with the EQS at the tail end of last year where we asked it to calculate a route from Weybridge in Surrey to Monaco. And on a 900-mile journey, it calculated that we would only be stopped charging for an hour and 10 minutes. That's impressive. That's a really impressive thing, because what it's doing is it's not asking you to stop and charge up fully. It's telling you should only add so much percentage of a charge to get you on your way. And that's the really clever aspect of the EQS. And that is what I think the future technology of electric cars is going to be. So much like the S-Class previewed those future things that we saw in normal everyday cars, that's what I think the EQS is going to lay its foundations as what we should be looking at for the future of electric cars. Now, charging. Obviously, if you're charging from your home wall box, if you have an 11 kilowatt wall box because you've got 3-phase electricity at home, the car will take that and it will go up to 100% in just 10 hours. But if it's a more likely 7 kilowatt wall box, because it's such a big battery, then you're looking at 15 hours from flat to full. Now, driving the EQS is, well, it's quite an experience if I'm honest with you. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first of all is, obviously it is beautifully quiet in here. It is a luxury car. It is obviously taking on the mantle of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, but it's different to the S-Class, which is nice because you drive an S-Class and everything's very quiet and everything's very refined, but it's also a bit detached, whereas in the EQS it's not. You don't feel detached at all. There's a bit more, and I'm going to be cautious here, it feels like a little bit more of a driver's car, which I quite like. Now, as I say, this is the 450 Plus, which is a single motor car, a single motor driving the rear wheels, and that produces 333 brake horsepower. There's going to be a 580, which is a dual motor car, which has, well, over 500 horsepower, and there's also going to be an AMG model, an AMG 53, which is up to 761 horsepower, which is a ludicrous amount, if you ask me, of power. But talking of this car, because this is obviously the one that we're focused on here, and the 0 to 60 time is just over 6 seconds. But I have to say, I think it feels faster. And the reason that I like it is because it's not that warp drive feeling that you get with a Tesla, where it's just a ridiculous amount of acceleration that kind of just scrambles your brain and you almost feel out of control. This is different. This feels like you're well in control of the car. The way that it delivers the power is much more linear. It just feels much better in terms of the way that you're able as a driver to handle that power. And I really, really like it. Now, obviously the power is just one thing. It's also the way the chassis copes with things. And obviously there's air suspension on the car. There's also rear wheel steering. So the car is 4-wheel steering. It'll steer up to 4 degrees as standard. Whereas you can pay a little bit extra to have an over-the-air software update for it to go up to 10 degrees. That's the only thing that kind of catches you out initially, because it's a big car. It is the size of an S-Class. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it just shrinks around you, because it doesn't. You are very much aware of the fact you're in a big car. So when you go into a roundabout, or you go into a corner, or you're manoeuvring out of your driveway or whatever, you take what you think is going to be quite a wide arc to do it, and you turn the wheel, and the car responds so quickly and so sharply, it really takes you by surprise. Now, that's not a fault. That's not a criticism. It's just something you have to get used to. But I really like it. So manoeuvring around tight car parking spaces, this huge 5-metre long car is like driving something a lot smaller. The only downside that I will say with what you've got in terms of the chassis is the brakes. The brakes are they're vague. They're more vague than a politician in question time. I don't know what it is. I really expected it to be a lot better, a lot sharper on the brakes than it is, and it really isn't. You put your foot on the pedal and it's like the pedal sends an email request down to the braking system and says, I think the driver would like to stop now. And I get an email response, an out of office email response. That's what it feels like. They need to be sharper. So if Mercedes are going to do something in the first over-the-air software updates, that's what it needs to be, because they are really, really vague, and especially on a car that's 2.5 tons. Now, you do have levels of brake regeneration, obviously, and you do that via these 2 paddles behind the steering wheel. There's the standard regen that it fits, which is quite nice and sort of like gentle. You've got a strong recuperation, which is effectively 1 pedal driving, and you can really feel the resistance on the throttle pedal. You've really got to push it through. I'm not so keen on that, if I'm honest with you. I like a nice strong regen, but it takes away the feeling from the throttle, and it makes me feel a bit uneasy, if I'm honest. The best one to go into is intelligent recuperation, and that basically is where the car will use various different things. It will use GPS location, it will use the radar guided cruise control, cameras and all the rest of it, the LiDAR, to detect whereabouts it is on the road. In other words, are you coming up to a roundabout where it will apply the brakes for you, or is there a car in front of you that's maybe just pulled out, where the cameras will pick that up and then I'll start to apply the brakes. That's the best setting that I've found with my time with the car, and that's the one I really, really like. It certainly takes away from having to use that very, very vague brake pedal. There are driving modes, of course there are. You go in via this dynamic switch down here. You have economy, you have comfort, sport and individual, where you can set things up obviously to your own liking in terms of how comfortable the car feels, and the amount of steering effort required and so forth. I have to admit, I've just been pretty much using comfort and sport. When you go into sport, again, you get that nice kind of, it's a digital noise. It's not a fake engine noise, it's a digital noise that you get through the speakers, like you do in like the Porsche Taycan, and I really quite like it. Call me a child if you will, but I quite like that. So you've got the different driving modes depending obviously on what you want. And being Mercedes, there is a plethora of safety systems that's on the car. So lane keep assist, it goes to level 3 autonomy if the law allows. So again, the car will steer itself if you want. It's say, if the law changes, then as I say, the EQS is already equipped to deal with all of that, if that's your bag. Personally, I like to drive. I want to talk a little bit about the sat-nav as well here, because we'll talk about it in the usability section in terms of the way the car figures out what it's doing and where it is. This is where technology is really coming to the fore in these cars, and this is what I have to admit I absolutely love. So much goes on in the EQS behind the scenes. It knows where it is. It's using GPS, it's using cameras, it's using all of those things. So it's using the adaptive damping as well. So it's just making it glide across the road. Now, the comfort level in this car is almost to the same level as probably the most comfortable car I ever drove, which was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. It's almost at that sort of level. The way this car rides out the bumps, the way that the chassis copes with things. There's enough feel through it that you know what's happening. A lot of people think comfortable just means having really, really soft suspension. That's not the case, because when you pitch a comfortable soft suspended car into a corner, you get body roll, and therefore you kind of fall out the seat, and that's not comfortable. What I want is a chassis that can cope with everything like that, and that's where the EQS plays its absolute trump card in my view, because the body control of the car and the way it deals with cornering and bends and undulations in the road. There's a really bad piece of road between my local town and the village I live in that has this huge ridge across it, this expansion joint, which no matter what car I've been in, when I hit it, it sends an absolute shudder through the whole structure of the car. And it just feels unpleasant, if I'm being honest with you. The EQS is the only car where I've hit that with, and I do mean the only car that I've hit that expansion joint with and hardly felt it. It's phenomenal how this car deals with such things like that. The other aspect of the comfort side of it is the noise levels, or dare I say lack of noise levels in here. Now again, it uses the speaker system in the car. This one's got the phenomenal Burmeister sound system in it, and it uses noise cancelling technology to take any noises that's coming into the cabin and just flatten them out, which is really clever. And it's not new technology, it's been around for a while, but I just think the way that Mercedes and the way that they employ it, the way that they use it, is what stands this car apart. Now, I took this car around the M25 the other day, and there's a section between my junction and the A3 that is purely concrete, and no matter what car you drive along there in, it just roars like a lion with toothache, except for this one. This one, you couldn't hear a murmur. It's as quiet as a church at midnight, this car, as far as I'm concerned. It is phenomenal, and that to me is what makes a luxury car. It's something that doesn't make any effort in upsetting your well-being. Anything that works towards making sure that you're as comfortable and as relaxed, while still being alert, obviously, in a car, to me, is a luxury car. And this is where the EQS stands head and shoulders above anything I've driven this side of a Rolls-Royce Phantom. It's really that good. The fact it's all electric just makes it even better. This is an absolute game-changing car as far as I'm concerned. The new BMW i7 is going to have to be on an absolute different level to better this car. Now, obviously, a bit like the house that's behind us, this type of luxury doesn't come cheap. The AMG line car starts the range off at £100,000. And if you move up to the AMG line premium or the luxury trim, depending obviously which one you want, then you're adding on another £7,000 on top of that. If you move up another grade to either the AMG line premium plus, or like this car, the exclusive luxury, then you're looking at £114,000 starting price. This car, of course, is fitted with the hyperscreen option, which takes this, as prices tested, to over £120,000. Now, those prices are just for the EQS450 Plus, Obviously the 580 and the AMG car that's coming out a little bit later, they're going to be on top of that. I think the AMG car is going to be around about £155,000 starting price. So as I say, it's not cheap, but in comparison with an S-Class with a similar sort of specification, it's not a massive gulf to go fully electric. So in terms of competition for the EQS, well obviously the main one is going to be the car that we're obviously all waiting to see in the flesh, which is BMW's new i7. It's all electric 7 Series. And of course these two have been rivals for years. The big disappointment for us, however, is the fact that Jaguar is no longer going to do an all-electric XJ, because I genuinely think, given what they managed to do with the I-Pace 4 years ago, an all-electric Jaguar executive saloon car would have been quite a car to see. But of course, we can't just look at the conventional 3-box big luxury saloons when we're talking about these cars. Competition's coming from the SUV market. Now, Mercedes are going to do an EQS SUV. Naturally, of course they are. But Range Rover is pretty much now classed as a luxury car rather than just a big off-roader. And it's going to come out with an all-electric version of its new model as well very, very soon. Audi can't be far away in terms of bringing out a big e-tron, whether or not it's a saloon, a bigger van or an SUV. They're bound to want a piece of this action. Porsche's Taycan? Not really. It is much more of a sports car. I would suggest it's probably not going to appeal to the same type of person. But the big competition for the EQS at the moment that I can see is from within Mercedes-Benz itself, and that's the S-Class. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Mercedes-Benz EQS. We like its comfort and refinement, the interior cabin space, the technology, its range and efficiency, and its great dynamics. We don't like the vague brakes. The styling is a little bit anonymous depending on specification, and there are still some small areas of cheaper plastic trim in the interior. It's not an overstatement to say that there is a massively heavy burden sitting on the shoulders of the new EQS. You see, for so long now, the S-Class has been the flag bearer, not just for the Mercedes-Benz range, but for executive luxury cars. It's also been a showcase throughout all of its generations for future technologies that we've seen now filter down into normal everyday cars that we, the buying public, have been buying and driving for years now. So the big question is does the EQS take that mantle from the S-Class and progress it even further? Yes. Yes, it does, and it does so with huge success. You see, although Mercedes-Benz cars, when they've been electrified, have been very, very good in our opinion, there's always been a compromise with them, because obviously they've been built on the platform of internal combustion engine cars. This isn't the case with this one. They've taken a clean sheet of paper and started afresh, and by doing so, they have created a car that is not only beautifully refined, supremely comfortable, great to drive, but showcases future technologies that we want to see in electric cars. It's got a big battery, it's got a great range, it has brilliant charging capabilities, and the technology within it, the way it interacts with the driver and helps us understand the car and get the best out of it, has to be applauded. Not only is this a brilliant new Mercedes-Benz, but I believe this is the absolute future of luxury motoring. Thank you once again for watching another episode of AutoEV. Please remember to make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the little bell button that's down below so you receive notification of when our next video goes live. If you like what we do, remember and give us a bit of a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Let us know how we're doing. Remember, we're on all social media channels as well, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. I've also got to say a massive, massive thank you to Huf-Haus UK for allowing us to use this magnificent house as a backdrop. And if you want to know even more about Huf-Haus, then I'll leave a little description and link down in the bottom there for you to go and have a look and check out this incredible house that's behind me. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Hope to see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.